Good morning. Today we are going to be still working on some sequencing. And remember, sequencing is putting things in order, events in order. And the author uses this to let us know how things happen in the story. We can sequence in fiction and in nonfiction stories. So remember, in a nonfiction text, the author may use dates, right, to help us. So, for example, June 12th, 1999. Or they may just use the year, for example, 2017, okay? And in both types of text, they're going to use some keywords that are going to help us identify the sequence of events. So they might be first, next, then last, after that, finally, second. All right, there are a lot of keywords when we are sequencing, okay? And I'm sure you could add to my list. I'm sure you've wrote some down in your notebook, or just as you have been reading different books and different passages this year, I'm sure you have noticed some more keywords. So today we're going to practice sequencing with some passages. So I am going to model a passage that is very similar to the ones you are going to do for your classwork today. So this one is called The History of Gatorade. So just looking at this, do we think it's going to be fiction or nonfiction? Well, I think it's going to be nonfiction. So nonfiction. And again, we can sequence with fiction and nonfiction. This passage just happens to be nonfiction. So let's read through this. The History of Gatorade. The year was 1965. A University of Florida assistant coach asked to meet with physicians. He asked them to figure out why so many players were being affected by heat-related illnesses. It didn't take long for a team of 4 researchers to identify the problem. The researchers quickly discovered that the players were losing fluids and electrolytes through sweat, and that these key substances were not being replaced. They also determined that players were losing large amounts of carbohydrates, which are needed for energy, and that these weren't being replaced either. They took their findings to the lab, and the researchers created a beverage that would replenish the substances that the Gator players were losing through sweat and exercise. They named their new drink Gatorade. After the players started drinking Gatorade, they began winning. They won 7 games that year, and their winning record progressed into the next season. In 1966, the Florida Gators won 9 games, and they won the Orange Bowl for the first time ever. Schools outside the state of Florida began hearing about Gatorade, and they ordered batches for their teams. In 1969, the Kansas City Chiefs were training in Florida. The Florida Gators coach told the Kansas City Chiefs coach about Gatorade. The Chiefs were impressed. They kept it on their sidelines all season. Most importantly, they went on to win the Super Bowl that year against the heavily favored Minnesota Vikings. After that, more and more NFL teams began placing jugs of Gatorade on their sidelines. In 1983, Gatorade became the official sports drink of the National Football League. In 1985, the Gatorade Sports Science Institute was founded. Researchers at the institute conduct scientific research in exercise science and hydration, and they continue to devise solutions for hydration problems. For example, in 2001, it was determined that professional sports car drivers were not staying hydrated during their races. Researchers created GIDs, the Gatorade In-Car Drinking System. This system can withstand 130-degree temperatures while keeping drivers hydrated throughout the course of their race. Gatorade is now the official sports drink of countless college and professional sports teams. In fact, most athletes cannot imagine competing without this well-known beverage nearby, ready to replenish their bodies when necessary. So let's go look at our questions. Okay, so number 1. Which of the events happened just after the Kansas City Chiefs found out about Gatorade? So again, I'm looking for what happened just after the Kansas City Chiefs found out about Gatorade. So I want to go back to my passage, and I want to go back to where I can find the Kansas City Chiefs, where they're talking about that, and let's see what happens when they find out about Gatorade. So let me see. Okay, so I see in 1969, the Kansas City Chiefs were training in Florida. The Florida Gators coach told the Kansas City Chiefs about Gatorade, so that's where they found out about Gatorade. So let's see what happens next. The Chiefs were impressed. They kept it on their sidelines all season. Most importantly, they went on that year to win the Super Bowl. So I think this could be they went on to win the Super Bowl. All right, against the heavily favored Minnesota Vikings. So let me see if that's one of my options. So I have A, the Minnesota Vikings won the Super Bowl. Well, I know it's not that. All right, let's see. That they won the Orange Bowl? No. That the Florida Gators won the Orange Bowl? Well, they did win the Orange Bowl, but that happened before the Kansas City Chiefs, went on to win the Super Bowl. So, looking at my answers, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So, letter D is going to be my answer because that happened just after the Kansas City Chiefs found out about Gatorade. All right, number 2, I'm looking for which event happened first in our passage. So letter A, 4 researchers developed a special beverage and named it Gatorade. Letter B, a Florida coach asked physicians to figure out why his football players were being affected by heart-related illness. Letter C, researchers discovered that players were losing electrolytes through sweat. Or letter D, players started drinking Gatorade before and during games. So remember, I'm looking for what happened first. So let me go back to my passage. All right, so I'm going to look for what happened first. So a University of Florida assistant coach asked to meet with a physician. He asked them to figure out why so many players were being affected with heart-related illness. So this is the very first thing that happens, and that's what they want to know. So I'm going to go back down to my answer, and I see that that is letter B. Letter B. All right, let's look at number 3. Which event happened after the Gatorade Sports Science Institute was founded? So again, that keyword right here, after the Gatorade Sports Science Institute was founded. All right, so I'm going to go back and find where it talks about the Gatorade Sports Science Institute and see what happens after that. So let's see. In 1985, the Gatorade Sports Science Institute was founded. Researchers at the institute conduct scientific research in exercise science and hydration, and they continue to devise solutions for hydration problems. For example, in 2001, it was determined that professional sports car drivers were not staying hydrated during their races. Researchers created GIDs, and this system can withstand 130 degrees temperatures while keeping drivers hydrated throughout the course of their race. So, going down to number 3. Letter A, the Gatorade in-car drinking system was invented for race car drivers. Letter B, Gatorade became the official drink of the NFL. Letter C, the Kansas City Chiefs players started to drink Gatorade. Or letter D, researchers first noted that athletes drinking Gatorade were performing better. So that's going to be letter A. That is what I highlighted in my text, right? All right, number 4. Read the following list of events. The Florida Gators football team started to drink Gatorade. Number 2, Gatorade became the first official drink of the NFL. Number 3, researchers discovered that players were losing fluids and electrolytes when they sweat, and their bodies weren't replenishing these substances. Number 4, the Florida Gators won the Orange Bowl. And number 5, GIDs were created for race car drivers. So in which order did the list of events occur? So for this one, they have given us these 5 events, right? They have given us these 5. And so they now want us to put these events in the correct order. So I've got to figure out, using my passage, which one came first. Well, I know because we've answered number 2 about what happens first. So I know that physicians wanted to figure out why players were losing fluids and electrolytes. So you can see, and I'm going to do this in red, over on this left column or side, I'm going to put how these events happen. So really, I see that number 3 really would come first in our order of events. And actually, instead of doing it over there, I'm just going to do it over here. So I see that 3 would come first. Well, then, which one am I looking at? What would happen next? So I'm going to go back to my passage. So I know that researchers were looking to figure out why they were being affected by these losing of these substances. And then I'm going to scroll down, and as I reread, I'm going to look for what happened next. So I see that what happened next, the players started drinking Gatorade and they began winning. So what team was that again? That was the Florida Gators, right? So let's see, the Florida Gators football team started to drink Gatorade. So then I'm going to put a number 1. All right, now I've got to figure out what comes next. So I know I'm dealing with the Florida Gators, all right? So they won 7 games that year, and their winning record progressed into the next season. In 1966, the Florida Gators won 9 games, and they won the Orange Bowl. All right, so looking at our question, the Orange Bowl is number 4, so I'm going to put number 4. So what happens after they win the Orange Bowl? I'm going to go back up. For the first time ever, schools outside the state of Florida began hearing about Gatorade, and they ordered a bunch of batches for their team. In 1996, I see that the Kansas City Chiefs in Florida, and they were training, and we know that they went on to win the Super Bowl. So as I continue reading, after that, more and more NFL teams began placing jugs of Gatorade on their sidelines. In 1983, Gatorade became the official sports drink of the National Football League, or the NFL. So I see that that is number 2. And then I only have one option left, but let me just double check that number 5 does actually come last. GIDs were created for race car drivers. So researchers created GIDs, all right? So number 5. So I need to figure out A, B, C, or D. Which one matches this order? Oh, well, I see letter D matches this order. All right. So for these type of questions, you just have to go back to your passage, and you might want to have your notebook to where you can help write out the order. That might be helpful as well. And number 5, which of the events happened just after the Florida coach asked physicians to determine why his players were being affected by heat-related illness? So I'm looking for what events happened just after the Florida coach had asked physicians. Okay? So what happens just after? Well, I see a University of Florida coach asked to meet with physicians. He asked them to figure out why so many players were being affected. It didn't take long for a team of 4 researchers to identify the problem. The researchers quickly discovered that the players were losing fluids and electrolytes through sweat, and that these key substances were not being replaced. So that's what happens just after they've been asked to try and help solve what's going on. So our answer for this one would be letter B. It happens just after the Florida coach talks to them. So today, your assignment, you're going to do the assignment Jane Goodall, and there's another passage with it. So Jane Goodall and the talent show. That can be found under classwork. It is the same format as this. Jane Goodall is going to obviously be a nonfiction passage, and the talent show is going to be a fiction to give you practice doing both. Again, remember just to go back to your text, go back to your passage, and really read these questions carefully, because they are going to use keywords in your questions like just after and what happened after, which of the events happened first, and just after. Okay, so read carefully, and once you get this done, finish up your assignments, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.